Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how are you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic.
Happy autumn.
Yes, we've got a real fall day here in New England. And it is absolutely amazing how quickly the temperature went from the 80s to the 40s.
Yep, we've gone from air conditioning to heat in 1 week.
Yep. I'm a bit stubborn about this. I want a couple of weeks where I don't have to turn either one on. So we'll push through the little cold spell we've got here, but it's already warming up. But you know the old saying, if you don't like the weather in New England, wait 15 minutes, it'll change.
Yep, it's done that a bit too.
So today we're going to pay a return visit to the Success Showcase Book Club, and we're going to talk about Deepak Chopra's The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And Chip, this was, you brought the book to us, so I'm going to pass it over to you and kick us off.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's heard of Deepak Chopra, the author. And Deepak, pardon the pun, but it's intentional, can be pretty deep at times. And this is, to me, the most simple. It's a short book. If you listen to it on Audible, it's only a little over an hour long. And basically, the principle of it, he says, although this book is titled The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, it can also be called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Life, because these are the same principles that nature uses to create everything in material existence. Then he talks about success in life could be defined as the continued expansion of happiness and the progressive realization of worthy goals. And he talks about the ability to fill our desires with effortless ease, but then we warp into the creation of wealth and everything else and so on and so forth. And so this is kind of like a really brief roadmap that kind of brings us back to basics, which Deepak likes to do, although when he's talking about basics, he can get very, very complicated. But it's something that I really feel it's a good thing to listen to, keep you grounded and so on and so forth, especially when your head is spinning around with all kinds of different things going on. It's a great way to kind of get back to the basics. And in a lot of cases, I think you're going through this book, it's maybe getting way too deep and into too basic stuff that maybe not seem real at times. So, but anyway, the first law is the one that surrounds everything, and it's called the law of pure potentiality. And he talks about our essence is our pure consciousness. Knowing who we are gives us the ability to fulfill our dreams, and all relationships are a reflection within our relationship with ourselves. In other words, everything is already there, and we just kind of have to pull it out of ourselves. When we talked about Wallace Wattles, it's kind of like the thinking stuff that's out there and that we're working with.
Yes, there were actually a lot of similarities between this book and The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles.
So he talks about awareness sleeps in minerals, it sleeps in plants, it awakens in animals, awareness becomes self-aware in humans. The good news is that we are already enlightened. The bad news is we've forgotten it. And so this is where he talks about getting a little bit into the meditative state, getting into the silent spaces between our thoughts and so on and so forth, wherein lies the potential for anything and everything. And, I know that we're getting a little bit deep here, but getting back into the different things that we've talked about in the past, it's really just observing without judging, taking that breath for a moment and just not thinking about it, just observing.
Right. There was actually a lot in this book I disagreed with, and a lot of it was, he gets a lot of the why right. It's the how that I really have a problem with. And when he's talking about pure potentiality, he talks about, well, what's really good is to be absolutely silent. And he says, every once in a while, you should do this for days. I don't know anybody who practically can do that. I mean, that is, as far as I'm concerned, unattainable for 90% of the people out there. And the other problem I have with it is he assumes that his way will work for everyone. And I can absolutely guarantee you that's not true. He talks about being at one with nature and going out into nature and enjoying that. I'm a city boy. 2 days in nature, I want to get the hell out of there. However, you put me in the middle of a city, I'm at peace. I have ideas coming. I'm, in harmony with my environment. So he assumes that because things work for him, they're going to work for everybody. And that's simply not the case. Everybody really has to find their own path to the goals he's talking about.
Yeah, obviously, a lot of what he puts in there is overkill as far as what to do, and he's practiced it a long time. But the bottom line is, if you just he has like steps applying the law at the end of each of these chapters, and applying law number one is taking the time every day to be silent. Now, obviously, he starts out with saying 30 days at morning and 30 days at night. But if you just get back to really number three, practice non-judgment. If you can just, again, pause without judging, that helps out a whole lot. So it's in that way, it's about every relationship being a mirror, attracting who we are, and so on and so forth. Being out and seeing the good in others instead of criticizing. I mean, these are all really, really good things.
Yes.
And
that point, he's got absolutely on target.
Yeah.
Because whatever you put out, if you're putting out negativity and you're hating people, that's what's going to come back to you. So that point he has right on target.
Yeah, and with the word potentiality, the bottom line is potentiality to me means everything good that you ever want it to happen, and if you work things the right way, it is there. It always has been, and it always will be there.
Exactly.
So, and then really logically going along, law number two is the law of giving. And I mean, that really doesn't need much explaining, but, we're constantly changing and so on and so forth, and we need to give in order to receive. Goes right back to the law of attraction that we talk about all the time. And the intention behind giving, he says, should always be to create happiness, obviously, in the person that we're giving to. And we all know that whoever is giving unconditionally is receiving at least as much or even more. So he talks about in that chapter, the only things that stop us from being generous are our own fear and ignorance that there's not enough in the world. It's coming from the lack perspective.
And we've talked a lot about the law of giving, not just in our own conversations, but in other books that we've gone through. The Go Giver, certainly The Science of Getting Rich. This is a very common theme, and it's very important because, yes, if you're hoarding and you're stuck in that lack mindset, then you're not going to be able to expand and you're not going to really succeed. He did say something in this chapter that I thought was incredibly limiting. And again, I disagreed with this. And he said, you had to give what you were looking to get. And he actually says, if you're looking to get money, you should give money. If you're, and it's like, I absolutely disagree with that. If you're giving of yourself, whether it's money, whether it's time, it's the act of giving that matters. What you're giving shouldn't matter.
Yeah, I exactly hear where you're coming from there. And, he does finish off with, I am abundance and I am joy, so that it is already there and searching for it. Again, the specifics of this are for some people and aren't for other people. And if you just take what the laws themselves are supposed to mean without all of his how-tos and just pick the ones that work for you, I think it's a really, really good formula.
Yeah, I mean, again, the basic laws are fantastic, and those, as we go through them, you'll really see that they all have their strengths. There are, again, bits and pieces in the book itself that, again, I disagree with, simply because he's essentially talking about what has worked for him. And I've said this over and over again in terms of time management books, and there isn't one system that works for everybody. But if you go for these goals, the laws are the goals that you should be going to. How you get there, if you don't get there the same way he does, that's fine.
Yeah, and he does use a lot of quotes and references to Buddha and so forth, who he follows closely. I mean, when he talked about we must learn to give whatever we wish to receive, he used a quote from Buddha that said, "Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared," which is a general statement that's perfect. But he does say, "What are you grateful for, and what can you give away that would benefit another?" And that's really the most important thing. And every seed has the promise of sowing 1,000 forests, but you must plant the seed. So I like
Yes.
when he's talking generalities a whole lot more than some of these specifics, because they do tend to get to certain people for sure as far as what they're doing. And they just because Deepak says it doesn't mean that it works for the person that's listening to him.
Right. In fact, I think the strongest parts of this book are when he's talking about the Buddhist principles. It's when he starts trying to use modern day examples that it sort of falls apart. So I think the problem is not so much with the laws or even the concept of the book. I think that's strong. I think he's just not explaining it well.
Yeah, did very well. I mean, again, I mean, I've listened to other of his Audible books and whatever, and have tried to make some sense out of it, and they're just too long and kind of too deep for me from time to time. So it's, but again, this one was pretty basic, and he does have a lot of good theory working for him, and a lot of a lot of good life. So. Um, the third law that he talked about is the law of karma, and this is the law of cause and effect. As you sow, so shall you reap.
Yep.
Everything that happens to us is the result of our past thoughts and actions. Every situation in life can be seen as a problem or an opportunity for growth. In other words, there's two ways of looking at everything. And, cause and effect, if you're looking at things negatively, you're going to get negative back.
Right. And also I think one of the most important points that he makes in this chapter is that where you are now is the result of all of the choices you've made in the past. So you may not have liked the choice you made in the past, but you made it and it got you where you are today. And I think that's very important for people to realize, because once you understand that, it really allows you to get rid of regret, because you see, okay, yes, I wouldn't have done that. I wish this had happened differently. But it also means you would be a different person in a different place. And I think that's very important for people to remember.
Yeah, I kind of parlayed this a bit. I mean, he talked about the karmic software where an action leads to a memory, which you have a desire and then you have an action as a result of that. And it brings me back to really Jack Canfield's success principle number one: take 100% control of your life. And that's event plus response equals outcome. And what he's talking a lot about here is our response. The way we respond to everything is going to affect everything that we do. So everything does happen for a reason. And he talks about the karmic curse is that we have forgotten who we really are. Do we feel responsible for our life? If not, who is? Do you make choices from your head or from your heart? Do you make choices easily or worry about having to make them? Are you happy with your life? And these are all things that are really, really good questions, food for thought. And if you can turn yourself towards a positive response to these, you're on your way.
Yeah, I mean, that's also something we've talked about in the past. And it really is important for people to understand that they are responsible for their own lives. And this is something I actually just wrote an article about, because you're seeing so much people saying, oh, well, it's because of something else. To the point that it's gotten ridiculous. We've